Victoria Sterling stood at her company's annual gala when her husband's boss got on stage and declared her love for him in front of 300 guests. 3 months later, that same boss was begging Victoria for a job. Tonight, I'll show you how a woman everyone dismissed as, quote, just a housewife, systematically dismantled a corporate empire and rebuilt it in her own image. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Ballroom at the Metropolitan Hotel cast dancing shadows across marble floors as I stood frozen near the champagne fountain, watching my entire life crumble in real time. The annual Sterling Industries Gala was supposed to celebrate another record-breaking year for the technology company my husband David had helped build from a struggling startup into a billion-dollar enterprise. Instead, it became the stage for the most public humiliation I had ever witnessed, delivered with surgical precision by someone I had considered a trusted friend. Amanda Richardson, David's boss and chief executive officer, commanded the podium with the natural authority that had made her one of the youngest female CEOs in the technology sector. Her emerald dress complemented the company's brand colors perfectly, while her confident posture suggested someone about to deliver exciting news about quarterly earnings or strategic partnerships. The assembled crowd of investors, board members, and senior executives settled into attentive silence. Wine glasses paused halfway to lips as they prepared for another corporate success story. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate Sterling Industries' remarkable achievements this year. Amanda began, her voice carrying easily across the expansive ballroom through the professional sound system. However, I have something far more important to share with you than financial metrics or market projections. The shift in her tone created subtle tension throughout the audience, though most attendees likely interpreted it as dramatic buildup for a major business announcement. Board members leaned forward in their seats, anticipating news about acquisitions or technological breakthroughs that would justify their investment confidence. Technology journalists present for the evening prepared to capture quotes that would define tomorrow's industry headlines. I stood 30 feet from the stage, positioned near the networking area where spouses typically gathered during corporate presentations, when Amanda's gaze found mine across the crowded room. The eye contact lasted only seconds, but something in her expression triggered immediate alarm, despite my inability to identify specific threats or understand why my stomach suddenly contracted with dread. For 5 years I have worked alongside the most brilliant, dedicated, and passionate man I have ever encountered, Amanda continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. David Sterling has been my strategic partner, my intellectual equal, and my closest confidant during the most challenging and rewarding period of my professional life. The praise seemed appropriate for recognizing a valued executive during a company celebration, though the personal language created subtle discomfort among audience members who expected corporate rather than intimate terminology. David, seated at the executive table directly in front of the stage, appeared genuinely surprised by the unexpected recognition, his expression cycling through confusion and modest embarrassment as colleagues turned to acknowledge his contributions. But tonight I need to speak a truth that I have carried in my heart for far too long, Amanda announced, her voice rising with theatrical passion that transformed corporate speech into personal declaration. David Sterling, you are the love of my life, and I can no longer pretend that our professional relationship represents the full extent of my feelings for you. The silence that followed felt like atmospheric pressure dropping before a violent storm. 300 guests processed her words with varying degrees of shock, confusion, and voyeuristic fascination as they realized they were witnessing personal drama rather than business announcements. Wine glasses remained suspended in midair while conversations died instantly, replaced by the collective intake of breath that accompanies witnessing something unprecedented and potentially catastrophic. I felt my champagne flute slip from suddenly nerveless fingers, crystal shattering against marble with a sound that seemed unnaturally loud despite the advanced acoustics that should have absorbed such minor disruptions. The golden liquid spread across pristine flooring, creating reflective pools that caught chandelier light, while I struggled to process information that contradicted everything I thought I understood about my marriage, my friendships, and my place in the social and professional ecosystem we had carefully cultivated over 15 years. Victoria Sterling is a lovely woman, I am sure, Amanda continued, her gaze returning to mine with laser precision that felt like physical violation. "But I love your husband more than you do. I understand his ambitions, I share his vision, and I can provide the intellectual partnership that transforms good men into great leaders." The calculated cruelty of her statement cut deeper than spontaneous emotional outburst would have achieved. This was not passionate declaration born from overwhelming feeling, but strategic character assassination delivered with the same methodical precision Amanda brought to hostile corporate takeovers. Every word had been chosen for maximum psychological impact, designed to humiliate me while positioning herself as the superior alternative for my husband's affections and professional future. The ballroom erupted into chaos as guests struggled to process the unprecedented breach of social and professional protocol. Board members exchanged alarmed glances while investors questioned whether they were witnessing mental breakdown or calculated corporate warfare. Technology journalists activated recording devices, recognizing that they were documenting either the end of Amanda Richardson's career or the beginning of the most dramatic corporate scandal in recent industry memory. David rose from his seat with the mechanical movements of someone whose cognitive processes had been temporarily overwhelmed by information that defied rational analysis. His face cycled through embarrassment, confusion, and growing anger as he processed the professional and personal implications of Amanda's public declaration. The man who had built his reputation on strategic thinking and measured responses appeared completely unprepared for this intersection of private emotion and public spectacle. "Amanda, this is neither the time nor the place for personal discussions," David managed, his voice carrying the diplomatic restraint he typically employed during difficult board meetings. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation privately after the event concludes." His response revealed the fundamental misunderstanding that would prove costly in the weeks that followed. David was treating Amanda's declaration as an unfortunate personal complication that could be managed through conventional conflict resolution strategies. He failed to recognize that her public announcement represented the opening move in a comprehensive campaign designed to restructure both his professional circumstances and personal relationships, according to her preferences. "The time for private conversations has passed, David," Amanda replied with the confidence of someone who had anticipated his response and prepared accordingly. "I have spent months watching you waste your potential in a marriage that diminishes rather than elevates your capabilities. Tonight, I am offering you the partnership you deserve, both professionally and personally." The audience remained transfixed by the unfolding drama, their discomfort evident in nervous shifting and whispered conversations that created undercurrent tension throughout the ballroom. Several board members appeared to be calculating the reputational and financial costs of association with whatever scandal was developing, while others seemed genuinely uncertain whether they should intervene or simply document the proceedings for future legal and public relations management. I stood paralyzed in the expanding pool of spilled champagne, my evening shoes soaked with liquid that seemed to symbolize the dissolution of everything I had believed about my life and relationships. The woman I had known for 5 years, with whom I had shared dinners and confidences, had just declared public war against my marriage while positioning herself as intellectually and emotionally superior to me in every meaningful category. The motivational foundation of what would become my transformation story was crystallizing in that moment of absolute humiliation. Every assumption about my worth, my relationships, and my place in the world was being challenged simultaneously, creating either complete destruction or the opportunity for fundamental reconstruction of my identity and capabilities on terms I would define rather than accept from others. Amanda's declaration continued with systematic dismantling of my marriage and personal worth that revealed months or years of strategic planning rather than spontaneous emotional confession. "David, you have settled for comfortable mediocrity when you could achieve extraordinary greatness. Your wife represents the past version of yourself, while I represent the future that your talents and ambitions deserve." The psychology behind her approach was sophisticated and deliberate, designed to force David into immediate choice between loyalty to existing relationships and pursuit of enhanced professional and personal opportunities. She was offering career advancement, intellectual stimulation, and romantic passion as integrated package deal that would require rejecting his current life entirely in favor of her alternative vision. The ballroom had become theater for corporate and personal warfare being conducted through public spectacle rather than private negotiation. Amanda Richardson was demonstrating her willingness to destroy established social conventions and professional protocols to achieve her objectives, while simultaneously challenging me to respond with comparable strategic sophistication or accept defeat through passive accommodation. The 300 witnesses to this declaration would remember this evening as the moment when their comfortable assumptions about corporate culture, professional relationships, and social boundaries were shattered by someone willing to weaponize personal emotion for strategic advantage. They were also witnessing the beginning of my journey from invisible corporate spouse to strategic operator, who would ultimately control outcomes rather than merely endure them. The shocked silence that followed Amanda's final statement created space for decision-making that would determine whether this moment represented my destruction or the catalyst for transformation that would demonstrate how profoundly others had underestimated my capabilities, my resources, and my determination to protect everything I valued while rebuilding it according to my own vision of justice and strategic effectiveness. The woman who had entered the Metropolitan Hotel ballroom as David Sterling's supportive wife was dissolving in real time, replaced by someone who understood that respect must be taken rather than hoped for, that strategic thinking trumps emotional reaction, and that the most profound transformations often begin with moments of absolute clarity about what must be defended and what must be changed to ensure that defense succeeds permanently. As conversations resumed throughout the ballroom, and Amanda stepped down from the podium with the satisfied expression of someone who had successfully executed a complex plan, I realized that she had made one critical miscalculation in her strategic assessment. She had assumed that her target was David's loyalty and affection, when in fact her most dangerous opponent was the woman she had just dismissed as intellectually and professionally irrelevant. The transformation was beginning, though Amanda Richardson would not recognize the full implications of her miscalculation until circumstances forced her to confront the reality that underestimating me had been the most expensive mistake in her professional career. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The morning after Amanda Richardson's public declaration, I sat in my home office surrounded by evidence of a professional life that David had never fully understood, and that our social circle had completely dismissed. The mahogany shelves contained leather-bound volumes on corporate strategy, international finance, and organizational psychology that most people assumed were decorative rather than working references. I consulted regularly for the consulting projects I managed discreetly from our Bellevue estate. My MBA from Wharton, earned summa cum laude 15 years earlier, hung framed beside advanced certifications in project management and strategic analysis that represented thousands of hours of continuing education I had pursued while maintaining the facade of devoted corporate spouse. The degrees and credentials that surrounded me told the story of intellectual development that had continued uninterrupted despite social expectations that marriage to a successful executive would eliminate my need for independent professional identity. The irony was profound and painful. Amanda Richardson had positioned herself as the intellectual superior who could provide David with strategic partnership that I supposedly lacked, while never bothering to investigate whether her assumptions about my capabilities bore any relationship to reality. Her public dismissal of me as intellectually inadequate revealed the depth of her strategic blindness rather than my professional limitations. The transformation that would ultimately destroy her career and rebuild Sterling Industries, according to my vision, had been developing for years through careful cultivation of expertise and relationships that David and his colleagues had systematically overlooked. While they assumed I spent my days managing household staff and organizing charity events, I had been building a sophisticated consulting practice that served Fortune 500 companies through discreet channels that protected client confidentiality, while generating substantial income independent of David's corporate success. Richardson Strategic Consulting, the firm I had established under my maiden name 8 years earlier, specialized in organizational restructuring and crisis management for technology companies facing complex operational challenges. My client list included several of Sterling Industries' direct competitors, providing me with comprehensive intelligence about industry trends, competitive vulnerabilities, and strategic opportunities that David's internal perspective could never generate. The decision to maintain professional independence while appearing to fulfill traditional corporate spouse expectations had required careful balancing of multiple identities and strategic management of information, that could have created conflicts of interest or competitive disadvantages for David's career. I had developed sophisticated protocols for managing confidential information from multiple sources, while ensuring that my consulting work enhanced rather than compromised his professional success. My most significant client relationship involved Technova Corporation, Sterling Industries, primary competitor in the enterprise software market. CEO Margaret Chen had retained my services 2 years earlier to analyze market positioning strategies and competitive response frameworks that would enable her company to challenge Sterling's dominance in their core business segments. The irony was that my strategic analysis had helped Technova identify vulnerabilities in Sterling's operations that David and Amanda were apparently too close to recognize themselves. The consulting work had provided me with detailed understanding of Sterling Industries' competitive position that exceeded the knowledge possessed by most board members, despite their access to internal financial data and strategic planning documents. External analysis often reveals patterns and risks that internal operators cannot recognize due to proximity and organizational blind spots that affect even the most sophisticated leadership teams. Chen had been particularly impressed with my analysis of corporate culture dynamics and leadership effectiveness metrics that predicted organizational vulnerabilities before they manifested in financial performance or market share losses. My academic background in organizational psychology provided analytical frameworks that complemented traditional business school approaches, generating insights that pure financial analysis often missed entirely. The relationship with Technova had evolved beyond typical consultant-client engagement into strategic partnership that gave me access to competitive intelligence and industry relationships that would prove invaluable when circumstances required more direct intervention in Sterling Industries' operations. Chen understood that my unique position provided unprecedented access to competitor information, while my analytical capabilities could transform that intelligence into actionable strategic advantages. My network of professional relationships extended throughout the technology sector and included former classmates from Wharton who now held senior positions at venture capital firms, private equity companies, and major technology corporations. These relationships were maintained through industry conferences, alumni events, and collaborative projects that kept me connected to strategic developments and career opportunities despite my decision to prioritize family stability over visible professional advancement. Rebecca Martinez, my former study partner who now served as managing partner at Summit Ventures, had been encouraging me for years to consider more prominent roles in corporate leadership or private equity investing. Her firm specialized in technology sector investments and corporate turnarounds that aligned perfectly with my consulting expertise and strategic interests. Victoria, you have better instincts for operational analysis than most of the executives we evaluate for funding, Rebecca had told me during our quarterly lunch meeting 3 months before Amanda's public declaration. Your strategic framework could transform struggling companies while generating substantial returns for investors who recognize your capabilities. The conversation had planted seeds for alternative career pathways that would prove essential when circumstances forced me to choose between accepting public humiliation or demonstrating strategic capabilities that Amanda Richardson had catastrophically underestimated. Rebecca's confidence in my abilities provided external validation that contrasted sharply with the dismissive attitudes I encountered within David's social and professional circle. My consulting practice had also connected me with Elizabeth Harper, investigative journalist for the Seattle Business Journal who specialized in corporate governance and executive accountability stories. Harper had approached me 2 years earlier for background analysis on technology sector trends, leading to ongoing professional relationship based on mutual respect for analytical rigor and ethical standards in business reporting. The journalism connection would prove particularly valuable given Harper's reputation for thorough investigation and her ability to influence public perception through strategic coverage of corporate developments. Her understanding of my professional capabilities provided credible external perspective that could validate my expertise when circumstances required public demonstration of strategic competence. The financial independence I had achieved through consulting work was another element of my background that David and his colleagues had never bothered to investigate or understand. Richardson's strategic consulting generated annual revenue that exceeded $200,000 through retainer agreements and project-based contracts that provided economic security independent of David's corporate compensation. This financial autonomy had enabled strategic investments in technology stocks and real estate that had performed exceptionally well over the past 5 years. creating a personal net worth that would support independent lifestyle choices without requiring accommodation to David's preferences or career constraints. The economic leverage provided options that most corporate spouses lacked due to financial dependence on their partners' professional success. The investment portfolio I had assembled included significant positions in several technology companies that competed directly with Sterling Industries, providing both financial returns and strategic intelligence about market developments that affected our family's primary income source. The diversification strategy protected against industry downturns while generating information advantages that enhanced my consulting effectiveness. My academic and professional credentials had also connected me with Dr. Patricia Williams, organizational development specialist who consulted for major corporations on leadership transition and cultural transformation initiatives. Williams had invited me to collaborate on several projects that required analysis of executive performance and strategic decision-making patterns that affected organizational effectiveness. The collaboration with Williams had deepened my understanding of corporate governance dynamics and leadership assessment methodologies that would prove essential for evaluating Amanda Richardson's strategic capabilities and identifying vulnerabilities that could be exploited through informed intervention. Her framework for analyzing executive competence provided objective criteria for measuring performance that transcended personality conflicts or emotional considerations. The personal coaching I had received from Williams had also enhanced my own leadership development and strategic communication skills, preparing me for executive responsibilities that I had not yet pursued but that my capabilities clearly supported. Her confidence in my potential provided professional validation that contrasted sharply with the limiting expectations imposed by traditional corporate spouse roles. The nonprofit board positions I held with 3 technology-focused charitable organizations had provided additional networking opportunities and leadership experience that demonstrated my ability to manage complex projects and coordinate diverse stakeholder groups effectively. These volunteer roles had been dismissed by David's colleagues as typical corporate spouse activities, while actually requiring sophisticated strategic planning and execution capabilities. My role as board chair for the Pacific Northwest Technology Foundation required overseeing annual budget allocation of $15 million in grants and scholarships, while managing relationships with corporate donors, academic institutions, and government agencies that influenced regional technology development. The position demanded strategic thinking and diplomatic skills that exceeded the requirements of many corporate executive roles. The combination of professional expertise, financial independence, strategic relationships, and leadership experience created a foundation for intervention that Amanda Richardson had never suspected existed. Her public declaration had been based on assumptions about my limitations that bore no relationship to my actual capabilities or resources. The motivational foundation of my eventual transformation rested on this comprehensive preparation that had been developing for years, despite external dismissal of my potential. The woman Amanda had dismissed as intellectually inadequate possessed analytical capabilities, industry knowledge, and strategic resources that would enable systematic dismantling of her apparent advantages while rebuilding Sterling Industries according to superior strategic vision. The morning after her public humiliation attempt, I began the careful process of activating relationships and resources that would demonstrate the catastrophic nature of her miscalculation about my capabilities. The transformation would require strategic patience and methodical execution, but the foundation was already established through years of careful preparation that nobody had bothered to notice or appreciate. The Pacific Northwest rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of our Bellevue home as I sat in the breakfast nook, watching David pace between the kitchen island and the glass doors that overlooked Lake Washington. His agitation was palpable in the silence that had stretched between us since his return from the hotel at 2 a.m, offering mumbled apologies about staying late to manage the crisis Amanda's declaration had created among board members and key investors. His phone had been ringing constantly since 6 a.m, creating a symphony of corporate damage control that revealed the magnitude of professional consequences Amanda's public spectacle had generated. Each conversation involved careful explanations to board members, strategic reassurances to major clients, and diplomatic management of media inquiries that threatened to transform Sterling Industries into a corporate scandal rather than a technology success story. The catalyst moment that would transform my approach from passive observation to strategic intervention arrived through an unexpected phone call that David answered with visible reluctance. The display showed Margaret Chen's contact information, indicating that Technova Corporation's CEO was calling Sterling Industries' Chief Technology Officer directly rather than routing communication through appropriate corporate channels. "David, I hope you understand that I am calling as a friend rather than a competitor." Chen's voice carried clearly through the speakerphone David had activated while continuing his restless movement around our kitchen. "The industry is buzzing about what happened last night, and I wanted to offer perspective that might help you navigate the situation more effectively." The conversation that followed would provide the final piece of intelligence I needed to understand the full scope of opportunity that Amanda's miscalculation had created. Chen's strategic assessment revealed vulnerabilities in Sterling Industries' current position that went far beyond reputational damage from personal scandal, extending into fundamental business challenges that threatened long-term competitiveness and financial stability. "Your board is already expressing concerns about Amanda's judgment and leadership stability," Chen continued, her tone carrying the analytical precision I had come to appreciate during our professional relationship. "Several major clients have contacted us about alternative service arrangements, concerned that personal drama might affect operational reliability and strategic focus." David's expression shifted from embarrassment to genuine alarm as he processed the implications of client defection and board confidence issues that could cascade through Sterling Industries' operations within weeks rather than months. The personal humiliation Amanda had intended to inflict on our marriage was generating professional consequences that threatened the company's market position and financial performance. "Margaret, I appreciate your concern, but I am confident that Amanda will handle the situation appropriately and that any temporary confusion will resolve quickly," David replied, displaying the loyalty that had always characterized his professional relationships while failing to recognize that such loyalty might be strategically counterproductive when circumstances required more analytical assessment of leadership effectiveness. Chen's response revealed information that crystallized my understanding of the strategic opportunity Amanda's public declaration had created through her catastrophic miscalculation about corporate governance and stakeholder management. "David, the board is scheduled to meet tomorrow morning to discuss leadership transition options. Several members have contacted me privately about potential executive recruitment and strategic advisory services." The revelation that Sterling Industries' board was already considering leadership changes represented a fundamental shift in corporate dynamics that created unprecedented opportunities for strategic intervention. Amanda's attempt to force David into choosing between personal relationships had instead generated board-level crisis that threatened her own position while creating openings for alternative leadership arrangements. "Are you suggesting that the board might remove Amanda from her position based on personal conduct rather than business performance?" David asked, his voice carrying the incredulity of someone whose loyalty had been challenged by evidence of strategic reality he had not previously considered. "I am suggesting that effective corporate leadership requires judgment and emotional stability that extends beyond quarterly financial metrics." Chen replied diplomatically. "Boards evaluate executives based on comprehensive competence rather than narrow technical expertise, particularly when personal decisions affect organizational reputation and stakeholder confidence." The conversation continued for another 15 minutes, during which Chen provided additional intelligence about industry reaction, competitor positioning, and strategic opportunities that Sterling Industries faced during this period of leadership uncertainty. Her analysis revealed that Amanda's public declaration had created exactly the type of corporate vulnerability that enabled strategic intervention from informed parties with appropriate resources and alternative vision. After David concluded the call and retreated to his home office to manage additional crisis communications, I contacted Chen directly using the secure line we maintained for confidential consulting discussions. The conversation that followed would establish the strategic framework for systematic intervention that would ultimately transform Sterling Industries according to superior strategic vision, while demonstrating the catastrophic nature of Amanda's assumptions about my capabilities. "Margaret, I assume you are calling David as part of broader strategic positioning related to Sterling Industries' current leadership crisis," I said without preliminary pleasantries, drawing on the direct communication style that had characterized our professional relationship for the past 2 years. "Victoria, I was hoping you would contact me directly," Chen replied with evident satisfaction. The situation presents extraordinary opportunities for strategic intervention that align perfectly with the organizational analysis we have been developing through your consulting work. The confirmation that Chen viewed current circumstances as strategic opportunity rather than mere corporate scandal validated my assessment that Amanda's miscalculation had created vulnerabilities that informed action could exploit systematically. The years of competitive intelligence I had gathered through discrete consulting work had prepared comprehensive understanding of Sterling Industries' operational challenges that could now be leveraged for direct intervention. The board meeting tomorrow will focus on immediate damage control rather than strategic leadership assessment, I observed, analyzing the timeline and decision-making process that would determine Sterling Industries' future direction. They will seek stability rather than transformation, creating opportunities for alternative approaches that address fundamental rather than superficial problems. Chen's response revealed the extent of preparation that had been developing parallel to my own strategic analysis, suggesting that multiple parties had been anticipating opportunities for intervention in Sterling Industries' operations based on systematic assessment of leadership effectiveness and competitive positioning. Technova has been preparing acquisition proposals for strategic assets within Sterling's portfolio for the past 6 months, Chen admitted, providing information that transformed my understanding of the competitive landscape and the urgency of circumstances that Amanda's declaration had accelerated rather than created. However, your insights about operational efficiency and cultural transformation suggest alternative approaches that could generate superior outcomes for all stakeholders. The revelation that Sterling Industries had been targeted for strategic intervention independent of current personal drama indicated that Amanda's leadership had been creating vulnerabilities that extended far beyond her recent public miscalculation. The company faced competitive threats and operational challenges that required sophisticated strategic response, rather than merely managing reputational damage from executive personal conduct. What specific alternative approaches are you considering? I asked, recognizing that this conversation would establish the foundation for strategic partnership that could reshape both companies while demonstrating capabilities that Amanda Richardson had catastrophically underestimated. Chen's proposal exceeded my expectations for scope and sophistication, revealing strategic vision that aligned perfectly with the organizational transformation I had been developing through consulting analysis. Rather than competitive acquisition, we are prepared to propose strategic merger that would combine complementary capabilities while establishing joint leadership structure that addresses both companies' operational challenges. The merger concept represented strategic opportunity that transcended simple corporate consolidation, creating possibilities for demonstrating executive competence that had been systematically overlooked by Sterling Industries' current leadership and board structure. The combined organization would require sophisticated management that drew on diverse expertise rather than narrow technical specialization. The joint leadership structure would require executives with demonstrated competence in organizational development, strategic analysis, and cultural transformation, Chen continued, outlining requirements that matched precisely with my professional background and consulting expertise. Your analysis of Sterling's operational dynamics provides exactly the internal perspective necessary for effective integration planning. The conversation that followed established preliminary framework for strategic intervention that would leverage Amanda's leadership crisis to demonstrate alternative approaches to corporate governance and executive competence. The timing was extraordinary, creating opportunities that could not have been planned but that years of preparation had positioned me to recognize and exploit systematically. Chen proposed that I assume strategic advisory role in merger planning, while gradually transitioning to operational responsibility for combined organizations' development and integration activities. The progression would provide platform for demonstrating executive capabilities while building stakeholder confidence in alternative leadership approaches that contrasted sharply with Amanda's emotional instability and strategic blindness. The board meeting tomorrow will provide initial assessment of current leadership stability, I noted, analyzing the decision-making timeline that would determine windows of opportunity for strategic intervention. Subsequent meetings will focus on longer-term strategic planning that creates openings for alternative proposals and leadership evaluation. The catalyst was now clear and actionable. Amanda Richardson's public declaration had created leadership crisis that threatened Sterling Industries' competitive position while simultaneously creating opportunities for demonstrating superior strategic vision and executive competence. The transformation from dismissed corporate spouse to strategic operator could begin immediately through systematic activation of relationships and resources that had been developing for years. The morning rain continued against our windows as I concluded the conversation with Chen and began implementing preliminary steps for strategic intervention that would ultimately demonstrate the catastrophic nature of Amanda's assumptions about my capabilities. The woman she had dismissed as intellectually inadequate was about to systematically dismantle her professional authority while rebuilding Sterling Industries according to superior strategic framework that addressed fundamental rather than superficial challenges. The motivational foundation was now established through clear understanding that circumstances had created unprecedented opportunity for transformation that aligned preparation with possibility. Years of systematic professional development and relationship building had positioned me to recognize and exploit strategic advantages that conventional thinking could never generate. The catalyst event had arrived, and the systematic demonstration of capabilities that Amanda Richardson had catastrophically underestimated could begin through coordinated action that would transform corporate leadership while validating the principle that strategic preparation creates opportunities that appear impossible to those who judge potential based on visible circumstances rather than comprehensive capability assessment. The emergency board meeting at Sterling Industries concluded at 11:30 in the morning, 30 minutes ahead of schedule, indicating that the directors had reached consensus more quickly than the comprehensive leadership evaluation I had anticipated. David returned home with the controlled expression he maintained during difficult corporate negotiations, though his posture suggested outcomes that exceeded his most pessimistic projections about reputational damage and governance implications. The board has placed Amanda on administrative leave pending comprehensive review of executive conduct and organizational impact, David announced as he settled into the leather chair beside our kitchen island, his voice carrying the measured tone he employed when delivering information with significant strategic implications. They have appointed Harrison Mitchell as interim CEO while conducting formal evaluation of leadership transition options. The news represented accelerated timeline for organizational change that created immediate opportunities for strategic intervention, while requiring rapid activation of relationships and resources I had been developing through years of discreet professional networking. Mitchell's appointment as interim leader indicated board preference for stability over innovation, suggesting that comprehensive transformation proposals would encounter resistance unless positioned strategically through appropriate channels and stakeholder management. Harrison Mitchell possessed solid operational experience but lacked the strategic vision necessary for addressing fundamental competitive challenges that were undermining Sterling Industries' market position independent of current leadership crisis. His appointment reflected board tendency toward risk aversion rather than strategic opportunity recognition, creating openings for alternative approaches that demonstrated superior analytical framework and implementation capability. What specific evaluation criteria will the board employ for permanent leadership selection? I inquired, recognizing that understanding their decision-making process was essential for positioning alternative candidates and strategic proposals that could reshape organizational direction according to more sophisticated competitive analysis. David consulted notes he had taken during the confidential session, providing intelligence about board priorities and evaluation methodology that would prove invaluable for strategic positioning during the leadership transition period. They emphasized operational stability, stakeholder confidence, strategic planning capability, and demonstrated leadership effectiveness in technology sector environments. The criteria aligned perfectly with my professional background and consulting expertise, while creating assessment framework that favored comprehensive competence over narrow technical specialization. The board was seeking exactly the type of strategic leadership that my analytical capabilities and industry relationships could provide, though they remained unaware that such capabilities existed within their immediate organizational ecosystem. I contacted Rebecca Martinez at Summit Ventures within an hour of receiving this intelligence, initiating conversation about strategic investment opportunities that Sterling Industries' current circumstances might create for informed parties with appropriate resources and alternative vision for organizational development. Rebecca, I understand that Summit Ventures has been evaluating technology sector opportunities in the Pacific Northwest market, I began, employing the direct communication approach that had characterized our professional relationship since business school. Recent developments at Sterling Industries may create exceptional possibilities for strategic intervention and value creation. Her response confirmed that investment firms had been monitoring Sterling Industries' performance with increasing interest over the past year, recognizing operational inefficiencies and strategic vulnerabilities that suggested significant improvement potential under appropriate leadership and resource allocation. Victoria, we have been developing preliminary analysis of Sterling's competitive position for several months, Martinez admitted, providing external validation of my assessment that Amanda Richardson's leadership had been creating systemic problems that extended beyond her recent public miscalculation. The current leadership crisis accelerates timeline for strategic intervention that could generate substantial returns through operational improvement and market repositioning. The conversation established framework for private equity involvement that could provide financial resources and strategic credibility necessary for comprehensive organizational transformation that addressed fundamental rather than superficial challenges. Summit Ventures' reputation for successful technology sector investments would enhance stakeholder confidence in alternative leadership proposals while providing capital for strategic initiatives that current management had been unable or unwilling to pursue. Martinez proposed that I assume strategic advisory role in due diligence process while gradually transitioning to operational responsibility for organizational development and integration activities that would demonstrate executive capabilities through measurable performance improvements. The progression would provide platform for systematic validation of strategic competence while building board confidence in alternative approaches to corporate governance and leadership effectiveness. The private equity model enables comprehensive evaluation of leadership potential through structured engagement that minimizes risk while maximizing opportunity for demonstrating value creation, Martinez explained, outlining methodology that addressed board concerns about leadership stability while creating pathways for alternative candidates to establish credibility through performance rather than merely credentials or political positioning. Simultaneously, I activated relationship with Elizabeth Harper at Seattle Business Journal to ensure that media coverage of Sterling Industries' leadership transition would accurately reflect strategic opportunities, rather than focusing exclusively on personal scandal and corporate dysfunction. Harper's investigative expertise would provide objective analysis of organizational challenges while positioning transformation initiatives as rational business decisions, rather than interpersonal drama. Elizabeth, the Sterling Industries situation represents classic case study in organizational leadership effectiveness and strategic decision-making under pressure. I explained during our confidential conversation about potential coverage approaches. The leadership transition creates opportunities for examining broader questions about executive competence evaluation and corporate governance best practices. Harper's analysis confirmed that business media was seeking substantive strategic content that transcended gossip about executive personal conduct, while providing insights about leadership transition methodology and organizational transformation principles that could inform broader industry discussions about corporate governance effectiveness. Victoria, your analytical framework for organizational assessment could provide valuable perspective for readers who are interested in understanding how companies navigate leadership crises while maintaining operational effectiveness, Harper suggested, proposing collaboration that would position my expertise as credible external resource rather than interested party with personal motivations. The media engagement strategy would ensure that public discourse about Sterling Industries emphasized strategic considerations rather than personal relationships, while establishing my credibility as thought leader in organizational development and corporate transformation methodology. The positioning would support subsequent leadership transition by demonstrating analytical sophistication and industry recognition that complemented operational experience. My next strategic move involved coordinating with Margaret Chen to accelerate merger exploration that would create comprehensive alternative to traditional leadership transition approaches, while demonstrating innovative solutions to competitive challenges that neither company could address independently. Margaret, the accelerated timeline for Sterling's leadership evaluation creates immediate opportunity for presenting merger proposal that addresses both companies' strategic challenges while establishing joint leadership structure based on demonstrated competence rather than political considerations, I proposed during our secure video conference. Chen's response revealed that Technova's board had already authorized preliminary merger exploration based on strategic analysis I had provided through consulting engagement, indicating that external parties recognized transformation potential that Sterling Industries' internal stakeholders had systematically overlooked. The preliminary valuation analysis suggests that combined organization would achieve market capitalization exceeding sum of individual company values through operational synergies and strategic positioning that neither company can achieve independently, Chen reported, providing financial validation of strategic framework that transcended personal considerations while creating compelling business case for organizational transformation. The merger structure would require joint leadership team that drew on complementary expertise from both organizations, while establishing clear accountability for performance metrics that demonstrated value creation rather than merely administrative consolidation. The approach would provide platform for systematic validation of executive capabilities through measurable outcomes rather than subjective evaluation criteria. During this same period, I was systematically documenting Amanda Richardson's strategic failures and missed opportunities that had been undermining Sterling Industries' competitive position over the past 18 months. The analysis revealed a pattern of decision-making errors that created vulnerabilities extending far beyond reputational damage from her recent public declaration. Her approach to client relationship management had prioritized short-term revenue optimization over long-term partnership development, resulting in declining customer satisfaction metrics and increasing contract cancellation rates that threatened sustainable growth prospects. The data revealed systematic strategic blindness that had been generating competitive disadvantages, while she focused on internal political positioning rather than market performance. Amanda's resource allocation decisions had consistently favored visible projects that enhanced her personal profile, while neglecting infrastructure investments and operational efficiency improvements that would have strengthened organizational competitiveness. The pattern demonstrated leadership priorities that served personal advancement rather than stakeholder value creation. Most significantly, her strategic planning process had failed to recognize emerging competitive threats and technological disruptions that were reshaping industry dynamics, while Sterling Industries maintained approaches that had been effective in previous market conditions but were becoming increasingly obsolete under current competitive pressures. The documentation provided comprehensive evidence base for demonstrating superior analytical capability and strategic vision that could address fundamental challenges Amanda had been unable or unwilling to recognize. The contrast between her emotional decision-making and systematic strategic analysis would validate alternative approaches to organizational leadership while justifying governance changes that extended beyond personal conduct considerations. By evening, I had established preliminary coordination between Summit Ventures, Technova Corporation, and Seattle Business Journal that created framework for comprehensive strategic intervention addressing Sterling Industries' leadership crisis through innovative approaches that demonstrated superior analytical framework and implementation capability. The alliance structure provided financial resources, strategic partnerships, media positioning, and analytical validation necessary for systematic transformation that would contrast sharply with traditional leadership transition approaches, while creating measurable value for all stakeholders involved in organizational development process. The intelligence gathering phase had revealed that Amanda Richardson's public declaration represented culmination of systematic leadership failures rather than isolated personal misconduct, creating opportunities for demonstrating alternative approaches that addressed organizational challenges through comprehensive strategic analysis rather than emotional reaction or political maneuvering. The foundation was now established for strategic positioning that would leverage years of preparation and relationship development to demonstrate capabilities that had been systematically underestimated by Sterling Industries' current leadership and board structure, while creating pathways for transformation that transcended individual advancement to generate sustainable organizational improvement. The photograph on my nightstand captured David and me during our 10th wedding anniversary celebration in Tuscany, our faces radiant with the contentment that comes from building something meaningful together over years of shared challenges and mutual support. The image seemed to mock me now as I sat alone in our master bedroom at 3 a.m, listening to David's troubled sleep in the guest room where he had relocated himself after our increasingly tense conversations about Amanda's declaration and its implications for our marriage and professional future. The personal stakes involved in my strategic intervention extended far beyond professional vindication or competitive advantage. Amanda Richardson had attacked the foundation of my identity and the relationships that defined my sense of purpose and belonging in the world. Her public declaration represented systematic assault on everything I had built over 15 years of marriage, professional development, and community engagement. The marriage David and I had constructed was based on genuine partnership, despite the traditional corporate spouse role I had chosen to maintain for strategic reasons. We had navigated his career advancement together, making difficult decisions about geographic relocations, social obligations, and financial priorities that supported his professional success while maintaining our personal connection and shared vision for the future we were building together. Amanda's calculated attempt to position herself as intellectually superior alternative to our partnership revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of what sustained relationships require beyond surface-level compatibility and professional networking. She had reduced our marriage to transactional arrangement while positioning herself as upgrade that would enhance David's career prospects through strategic alliance rather than emotional commitment. The psychological impact of her public humiliation extended beyond personal embarrassment to existential challenge of my worth as partner, intellectual equal, and strategic contributor to the success David had achieved through our collaborative decision-making over more than a decade of shared professional and personal development. Her declaration had forced recognition that others viewed my contributions as negligible, despite their substantial impact on David's ability to take calculated risks, pursue ambitious projects, and maintain professional relationships that required comprehensive support system extending beyond office hours and corporate networking events. The financial investments I had made in David's career development included personal sacrifices that Amanda could never comprehend from her position as ambitious executive focused exclusively on individual advancement. I had declined lucrative consulting opportunities that would have required extensive travel during critical periods of his strategic planning and client relationship development. The geographic limitations I had accepted to maintain stability for his corporate networking had restricted my own professional advancement while providing foundation that enabled his consistent performance and strategic focus. The social obligations I had fulfilled on his behalf had consumed time and energy that could have been directed toward building my own visible professional profile. The intellectual contributions I had provided through informal strategic consultation had enhanced his decision-making capability, while remaining invisible to colleagues who assumed his analytical sophistication was developed independently. The emotional support I had offered during difficult professional challenges had enabled his resilience and strategic thinking under pressure. Amanda's dismissal of these contributions as evidence of intellectual inadequacy revealed her inability to recognize that sustainable success requires comprehensive support systems that extend beyond individual capability and ambition. Her approach to professional advancement through personal relationship manipulation demonstrated strategic blindness about long-term reputation management and stakeholder trust that would ultimately undermine her leadership effectiveness. The broader implications of her public declaration extended to my relationships within our social and professional community, where I had carefully cultivated reputation as supportive corporate spouse, while discreetly building consulting practice that generated substantial income and industry recognition. Her attack threatened to undermine years of relationship building and professional positioning that had enabled my dual identity as traditional wife and strategic business consultant. The country club memberships, charity board positions, and social networking obligations I had maintained were not merely ceremonial roles, but strategic platforms for developing relationships and gathering intelligence that supported both David's career advancement and my own consulting practice. Amanda's public humiliation threatened to transform these carefully managed relationships into sources of pity and social awkwardness that could damage my professional credibility. The nonprofit organizations where I served in leadership positions depended on my ability to maintain relationships with major donors and corporate partners who valued discretion and professional competence above public drama. Amanda's attempt to position me as emotionally and intellectually inferior threatened to undermine my effectiveness in these volunteer roles that provided significant personal satisfaction and community impact. The private school connections we had developed for our nephews and nieces required maintaining social standing within educational community that valued stability and conventional relationship models above unconventional family arrangements. Amanda's public challenge to our marriage threatened to create complications for family relationships that extended beyond David and me, to include his siblings and their children who benefited from our social positioning. The real estate investments we had made in Pacific Northwest properties required ongoing relationships with development companies, local government officials, and community organizations that could be affected by reputational damage from public scandal. Amanda's declaration threatened to transform profitable business relationships into sources of gossip and speculation that could affect financial returns and future investment opportunities. The personal friendships I had maintained with other corporate spouses and professional women required careful balance between authentic connection and strategic positioning that could be disrupted by public drama that forced others to choose sides or distance themselves from potential controversy. Amanda's attack threatened to isolate me from support networks that provided emotional sustenance and practical assistance during challenging periods. The deeper injury involved recognition that Amanda had been systematically observing our marriage and professional relationships for months or years, while developing strategy for replacing me based on calculated assessment of my apparent vulnerabilities and David's potential responsiveness to alternative partnership arrangements. Her confidence in making public declarations suggested extensive preparation that included analysis of David's personality, career ambitions, and relationship patterns that she believed would make him receptive to her proposal, despite its devastating impact on our marriage and social standing. The sophistication of her strategic planning revealed that she had been treating our friendship as intelligence-gathering operation while positioning herself for romantic and professional intervention that would eliminate me as competitor for David's attention and loyalty. Her willingness to destroy our marriage through public humiliation demonstrated ruthless prioritization of personal advancement over ethical considerations or relationship integrity that extended beyond professional ambition into fundamental character deficiencies that disqualified her from leadership positions requiring stakeholder trust. The motivational foundation for my strategic intervention was crystallizing through recognition that Amanda's attack represented broader challenge to women who maintain traditional roles while developing professional capabilities that others systematically underestimate or dismiss as irrelevant to competitive environments. Her assumption that corporate spouse identity indicated intellectual limitations revealed cultural prejudices that prevented recognition of diverse pathways to expertise and strategic capability that could enhance rather than threaten organizational effectiveness when properly understood and leveraged. The transformation I was planning would demonstrate not only my individual capabilities but also broader principle that sustainable competitive advantage requires comprehensive perspective and collaborative intelligence that transcends narrow specialization and individual achievement orientation. The personal stakes involved defending not only my marriage and social position, but also validating alternative approaches to professional development and strategic thinking that traditional corporate advancement pathways often overlook or undervalue, despite their potential for generating superior organizational outcomes. The intervention would require risking everything I had built over 15 years to demonstrate that strategic preparation and systematic relationship development could create opportunities for transformation that appeared impossible to those who evaluated potential based on visible circumstances rather than comprehensive capability assessment. The choice was between accepting permanent diminishment of my identity and relationships, or demonstrating strategic sophistication that would validate years of discrete professional development, while establishing foundation for continued growth and recognition that aligned with my actual capabilities rather than others, limiting assumptions. The personal cost of action included potential loss of marriage if David chose Amanda's alternative vision over continued partnership with me, potential damage to social relationships if my strategic intervention was perceived as inappropriate competitive response, and potential professional consequences if my consulting practice became associated with interpersonal drama rather than analytical competence. The personal cost of inaction included accepting permanent position as intellectually inferior alternative to Amanda's professional sophistication, watching David's career development continue under guidance that excluded my strategic input, and maintaining social relationships based on pity rather than respect for my contributions and capabilities. The strategic intervention represented opportunity to demonstrate that circumstances do not define potential when individuals maintain focus on systematic preparation and relationship development that creates options for transformation during moments when others' miscalculations create unprecedented opportunities for those prepared to recognize and exploit strategic advantages through coordinated action rather than emotional reaction. The Sterling Industries headquarters occupied 12 floors of the Columbia Tower, its glass facade reflecting the competitive intensity of Seattle's technology corridor, while concealing the operational dysfunction that threatened the company's market position, despite impressive quarterly revenue reports. My access to this corporate ecosystem came through social obligations that positioned me as invisible observer during executive gatherings, board receptions, and strategic planning retreats, where confidential discussions revealed institutional blind spots that external consultants could never identify. Over the past 18 months, I had systematically documented patterns of decision-making inefficiency, resource misallocation, and strategic short-sightedness that created vulnerabilities extending far beyond Amanda Richardson's recent leadership crisis. The organizational analysis revealed systematic problems that required comprehensive transformation, rather than merely replacing dysfunctional executives with conventional alternatives who would perpetuate underlying structural deficiencies. The company's leadership team functioned as isolated specialists who excelled within narrow technical domains while lacking systematic understanding of how their individual decisions affected organizational effectiveness across departments and strategic initiatives. This compartmentalization created coordination failures that undermined competitive advantage despite significant investments in talented personnel and advanced technological infrastructure. Amanda Richardson's approach to strategic planning emphasized short-term financial metrics that impressed board members during quarterly reviews, while neglecting long-term capacity building and competitive positioning that would sustain market leadership through changing industry conditions. Her quarterly presentations consistently highlighted revenue growth and cost reduction achievements, while omitting analysis of customer satisfaction trends, employee retention patterns, and competitive intelligence that revealed declining organizational health beneath impressive financial performance. The product development process suffered from inadequate coordination between engineering teams and market analysis groups, resulting in technological solutions that demonstrated impressive technical sophistication while failing to address actual customer needs or competitive market opportunities. Engineering Director Robert Chen consistently prioritized technical elegance over practical functionality, creating products that impressed industry observers while generating disappointing sales performance and customer adoption rates. Marketing Director Patricia Reynolds operated sophisticated campaigns that generated strong brand recognition and media coverage while failing to translate visibility into sustainable customer relationships and revenue growth. Her approach emphasized creative messaging and awards recognition over systematic analysis of customer acquisition costs and lifetime value metrics that determined actual return on marketing investments. Sales Director Michael Foster maintained strong relationships with existing major clients, while struggling to develop new customer acquisition strategies that could replace revenue from contracts that faced increasing competitive pressure and pricing challenges. His reliance on established relationships created dangerous concentration of revenue sources that increased vulnerability to client defection or market disruption. The Human Resources Department, led by Director Sandra Walsh, focused primarily on compliance management and administrative efficiency, while neglecting strategic workforce development and organizational culture initiatives that could enhance employee engagement and retention. The company experienced annual turnover rates exceeding 25% in technical positions, creating continuous training costs and knowledge transfer challenges that undermined operational consistency and competitive capability. Financial management under CFO James Morrison emphasized cost reduction and budget control, rather than strategic investment analysis that could identify growth opportunities and competitive advantages worth pursuing despite short-term expense increases. His conservative approach to capital allocation prevented investments in infrastructure upgrades, employee development programs, and technological innovations that competitors were using to gain market share and operational efficiency. The board of directors operated with limited understanding of technological trends and competitive dynamics that shaped the industry landscape, relying primarily on financial summaries and executive presentations that filtered complex operational realities through sanitized reports designed to maintain confidence rather than facilitate informed strategic decision-making. Board meetings focused on retrospective performance analysis rather than prospective strategic planning that could position the company for sustained competitive advantage. Corporate governance structures emphasized hierarchy and formal authority rather than collaborative problem-solving and systematic decision-making processes that could leverage diverse expertise and perspective throughout the organization. Executive decision-making occurred through informal consultation networks that excluded lower-level employees who possessed operational knowledge and customer interaction experience that could enhance strategic planning effectiveness. The information technology infrastructure reflected historical decisions and budget constraints rather than systematic assessment of competitive requirements and operational efficiency opportunities. Legacy systems created integration challenges that increased administrative overhead, while limiting the company's ability to implement innovative solutions and respond rapidly to changing market conditions or customer requirements. Customer service operations maintained adequate response times and technical problem resolution, while lacking systematic feedback collection and analysis processes that could identify product improvement opportunities and competitive positioning insights. Customer complaints and suggestions were handled as isolated incidents rather than strategic intelligence that could inform product development and marketing strategy decisions. Vendor relationships emphasized cost minimization over partnership development that could create mutual value and competitive advantages through collaborative innovation and exclusive access to emerging technologies. The procurement process focused on short-term expense reduction rather than long-term relationship building that could provide strategic advantages and operational flexibility during market transitions. Competitive intelligence gathering was limited to publicly available information and industry conference attendance, rather than systematic analysis of competitor strategies, market positioning, and technological development that could inform strategic planning and anticipate competitive threats before they affected market share and revenue performance. The organizational culture emphasized individual achievement and departmental performance over collaborative problem-solving and systematic learning that could enhance overall organizational capability and competitive positioning. Employee recognition systems rewarded narrow technical excellence while neglecting cross-functional collaboration and strategic thinking that contributed to long-term organizational success. Strategic planning processes occurred annually through formal retreats that produced comprehensive documentation, while lacking ongoing monitoring and adjustment mechanisms that could respond to changing market conditions and competitive developments between formal planning cycles. The resulting strategic plans functioned as administrative requirements rather than dynamic frameworks for guiding daily decision-making and resource allocation. Client relationship management relied heavily on personal networking and informal communication, rather than systematic processes for understanding customer needs, tracking satisfaction metrics, and identifying expansion opportunities that could increase revenue and strengthen competitive positioning. Major client relationships depended on individual executives rather than organizational capabilities that would survive personnel changes and leadership transitions. The research and development function operated with substantial budgets and talented technical personnel while lacking systematic market research and competitive analysis that could focus innovation efforts on commercially viable opportunities rather than technically interesting projects that demonstrated capability without generating sustainable competitive advantages. Quality assurance processes maintained adequate product reliability and customer satisfaction, while lacking systematic analysis of operational efficiency and customer experience that could identify improvement opportunities and competitive differentiation possibilities that would justify premium pricing and enhance market positioning. Project management across departments emphasized timeline adherence and budget control over strategic alignment and value creation that could ensure individual projects contributed to overall organizational objectives rather than merely meeting administrative requirements and departmental performance metrics. These systematic observations revealed that Sterling Industries faced fundamental organizational challenges that required comprehensive transformation rather than incremental improvements or leadership succession within existing operational frameworks. The company possessed substantial resources and talented personnel, while lacking systematic decision-making processes and strategic coordination that could leverage these assets for sustained competitive advantage. The organizational dysfunction created extraordinary opportunities for demonstrating alternative approaches to corporate leadership and strategic management that could generate measurable improvements in operational effectiveness, competitive positioning, and financial performance through systematic application of analytical frameworks and collaborative decision-making processes. My analysis indicated that successful intervention would require simultaneous transformation of leadership philosophy, organizational structure, and operational processes, rather than focusing exclusively on personnel changes or departmental reorganization that left underlying systemic problems unaddressed. The documentation provided comprehensive foundation for strategic intervention that would demonstrate superior analytical capability and implementation expertise, while addressing fundamental rather than superficial organizational challenges through systematic application of proven business transformation methodologies. The transformation of Sterling Industries would require coordination across multiple stakeholder groups, each possessing distinct expertise and resources that could support comprehensive organizational change while mitigating risks associated with challenging established leadership structures. My years of systematic relationship building had created a network of professionals who valued competence over conventional hierarchy, and who possessed the analytical sophistication necessary to recognize strategic opportunities that traditional corporate advancement pathways often overlooked. Dr. Catherine Walsh emerged as my primary intellectual ally through our collaboration on nonprofit board initiatives that demonstrated her exceptional capability in organizational development and strategic planning. Her doctorate in organizational psychology from Harvard, combined with 20 years of corporate consulting experience, provided theoretical framework and practical methodology for the complex transformation that Sterling Industries required to address its fundamental operational challenges. Catherine served as senior partner at Walsh Strategic Consulting, where she specialized in leadership transition management and cultural transformation for technology companies facing competitive pressures and organizational dysfunction. Her client portfolio included several Fortune 500 companies that had achieved remarkable turnarounds through systematic application of evidence-based management principles and collaborative decision-making processes that leverage diverse expertise throughout organizational hierarchies. Her assessment of Sterling Industries' current situation aligned perfectly with my own analysis while providing external validation and additional perspective that enhanced strategic planning effectiveness. Victoria, the organizational dynamics you describe represent classic symptoms of leadership failure and structural dysfunction that require comprehensive intervention rather than incremental adjustments, Catherine observed during our confidential consultation at her downtown office. The conversation established framework for strategic partnership that would combine my insider knowledge of Sterling Industries with her expertise in organizational transformation methodology. Catherine agreed to serve as lead consultant for comprehensive organizational assessment that would document systemic problems and provide detailed recommendations for structural and cultural changes necessary to restore competitive effectiveness and stakeholder confidence. Her involvement provided credibility and analytical rigor that would enhance board receptivity to transformation proposals, while demonstrating that my strategic recommendations reflected best practices in organizational development rather than personal motivations or interpersonal considerations. The partnership represented collaboration between complementary expertise rather than individual advancement through competitive positioning. Thomas Bradley, my former professor from Wharton, who now served as Dean of Executive Education, provided academic credibility and theoretical foundation for the strategic intervention I was planning. His research on corporate governance effectiveness and leadership transition management had established him as recognized authority in business academia, while his consulting relationships with major corporations provided practical experience in implementing organizational change initiatives. Bradley's assessment of Sterling Industries' competitive position and leadership challenges validated my analysis while positioning potential transformation as case study opportunity for academic research and executive education programming. The combination of technological capability and organizational dysfunction creates exceptional opportunity for demonstrating how systematic management principles can generate measurable improvements in operational effectiveness and competitive positioning, he explained during our lengthy discussion about potential collaboration. His involvement would provide academic legitimacy and research methodology that could document transformation results while contributing to broader understanding of organizational change management in technology sector environments. The academic partnership would also create opportunities for publishing case studies and research findings that could enhance professional recognition for all participants while advancing knowledge in organizational development field. Jennifer Morrison, partner at Morrison & Associates legal firm, brought expertise in corporate governance and merger regulations that would prove essential for navigating complex legal requirements associated with potential organizational restructuring and leadership transitions. Her specialization in technology sector transactions provided detailed understanding of regulatory frameworks and stakeholder obligations that could affect strategic intervention timing and implementation methodology. Morrison's analysis revealed that Sterling Industries' current governance structure contained vulnerabilities that could facilitate strategic intervention while protecting stakeholder interests and ensuring compliance with corporate law requirements. The board's fiduciary obligations create opportunities for proposing alternative leadership arrangements that serve shareholder interests more effectively than current management approaches. She explained during our comprehensive review of governance documentation and strategic options. Her legal expertise would ensure that transformation initiatives proceeded through appropriate channels, while meeting all regulatory requirements and protecting participants from potential liability or procedural challenges. The legal framework would also provide structure for documenting decisions and maintaining accountability throughout organizational change process. Robert Martinez, Senior Vice President at Pacific Northwest Bank, provided financial expertise and institutional relationships that could support strategic intervention through appropriate funding mechanisms and stakeholder communication. His experience in technology sector financing and corporate restructuring transactions offered practical knowledge of investor expectations and financial management requirements during organizational transitions. Martinez's assessment of Sterling Industries' financial position revealed strengths and vulnerabilities that could affect transformation planning, while identifying potential funding sources for strategic initiatives that required capital investment beyond current operational budgets. The company's strong cash position and minimal debt burden create flexibility for strategic investments that could enhance competitive positioning, while the leadership transition provides opportunity for comprehensive operational review. He noted during our detailed financial analysis, his banking relationships would facilitate access to capital markets and institutional investors who could support transformation initiatives, while his expertise in financial structuring would ensure that strategic investments generated appropriate returns for stakeholders while supporting long-term organizational development objectives. Catherine Chen, technology editor at Pacific Northwest Business Review, brought media expertise and industry relationships that could influence public perception and stakeholder confidence during leadership transition process. Her reputation for analytical depth and objective reporting had established credibility with business leaders throughout the region, while her understanding of technology sector dynamics provided context for evaluating organizational change initiatives. Chen's involvement would ensure accurate media coverage that emphasized strategic considerations rather than personal drama, while positioning transformation initiatives as rational business decisions based on operational analysis and competitive requirements. The Sterling Industries situation represents an important case study in corporate governance effectiveness and leadership accountability that could inform broader industry discussions about organizational management in competitive technology markets, she observed. Her media platform would provide opportunity for thought leadership and industry education that could enhance professional recognition while contributing to broader understanding of effective organizational change management. The media engagement would also help manage stakeholder expectations and build support for transformation initiatives through informed public discourse. Dr. Michael Foster, Research Director at Technology Innovation Institute, provided industry intelligence and competitive analysis that enhanced understanding of market trends and technological developments affecting Sterling Industries' strategic position. His research on enterprise software markets and organizational technology adoption patterns offered valuable context for evaluating competitive threats and strategic opportunities. Foster's analysis revealed that Sterling Industries faced increasing competitive pressure from more agile companies that had implemented innovative management approaches and operational processes that enabled faster response to market changes and customer requirements. The traditional hierarchical management structures that characterized early technology companies are becoming competitive disadvantages in markets that reward rapid innovation and customer responsiveness, he explained. His research insights would inform transformation planning, while his industry relationships could provide access to best practices and implementation expertise from successful organizational change initiatives in similar competitive environments. The academic perspective would also contribute to strategic planning effectiveness through objective analysis of industry trends and competitive dynamics. These alliance relationships created comprehensive support structure that combined academic credibility, legal expertise, financial capability, media positioning, and industry intelligence necessary for successful organizational transformation. Each ally possessed distinct expertise and resources, while sharing commitment to evidence-based decision-making and systematic approach to complex problem-solving that aligned with my analytical framework and strategic objectives. The network represented collaboration between professionals who valued competence and analytical rigor over traditional corporate hierarchy and political positioning. Their willingness to support transformation initiative reflected recognition that current organizational dysfunction required comprehensive intervention rather than conventional leadership succession within existing structural limitations. The ally development process also demonstrated effective relationship building and collaborative leadership that would become essential capabilities for managing organizational transformation once strategic intervention began. The relationships were based on mutual respect and complementary expertise rather than subordination or competitive positioning that could undermine collaborative effectiveness. The strategic alliance provided foundation for systematic intervention that could address Sterling Industries' fundamental challenges while demonstrating alternative approaches to corporate leadership and organizational management that transcended individual advancement to generate sustainable value for all stakeholders involved in transformation process. The motivational significance of these alliances extended beyond practical support to validation of alternative approaches to professional development and strategic thinking that emphasized collaborative problem-solving over individual competition and systematic analysis over conventional wisdom about corporate advancement and leadership effectiveness. Amanda Richardson's strategic vulnerabilities extended far beyond her recent public declaration, revealing patterns of decision-making and leadership philosophy that had been systematically undermining Sterling Industries' competitive position while creating organizational dysfunction that threatened long-term sustainability. Her approach to corporate governance reflected fundamental misunderstandings about effective leadership that would prove catastrophic when subjected to comprehensive analysis and stakeholder evaluation. Her primary weakness resided in emotional decision-making that prioritized personal advancement over organizational effectiveness. The public declaration at the gala represented culmination of strategic thinking that confused dramatic gesture with effective leadership, while demonstrating profound misunderstanding of stakeholder management and reputation consequences that extend beyond immediate gratification of personal desires. The calculated nature of her romantic pursuit revealed systematic manipulation of professional relationships that violated corporate governance principles and created liability exposure for Sterling Industries through potential harassment claims and hostile work environment allegations. Her willingness to compromise organizational reputation for personal objectives demonstrated leadership priorities that disqualified her from executive responsibility, regardless of technical competence or historical performance achievements. Amanda's approach to strategic planning emphasized short-term financial metrics that impressed board members during quarterly reviews, while neglecting fundamental competitive positioning and organizational capability development that determined sustainable market leadership. Her quarterly presentations consistently highlighted revenue growth and cost reduction achievements while omitting analysis of customer satisfaction trends, employee retention patterns, and competitive intelligence that revealed declining organizational health beneath superficial financial performance. Her resource allocation decisions reflected similar short-term optimization that undermined long-term competitive capability. Budget planning consistently favored visible projects that enhanced her personal profile, while neglecting infrastructure investments and operational efficiency improvements that would have strengthened organizational competitiveness against emerging market threats and technological disruptions. The engineering development priorities she established emphasized technical sophistication over market responsiveness, resulting in product offerings that demonstrated impressive technological capability while failing to address actual customer needs or competitive market opportunities. Her management of the product development process created coordination failures between technical teams and market analysis groups that reduced innovation effectiveness and customer adoption rates. Amanda's relationship with key clients demonstrated superficial networking capability while lacking systematic understanding of customer relationship management principles that create sustainable revenue growth and competitive differentiation. Her approach emphasized personal charisma and short-term problem resolution over strategic partnership development that could generate long-term value and market positioning advantages. The human resources policies she implemented reflected cost optimization rather than strategic workforce development that could enhance organizational capability and competitive advantage. Her approach to talent management created annual turnover rates exceeding 25% in critical technical positions, generating continuous training costs and knowledge transfer challenges that undermined operational consistency and competitive effectiveness. Her vendor relationship management emphasized cost minimization over partnership development that could create mutual value and competitive advantages through collaborative innovation and strategic cooperation. The procurement policies she established focused on short-term expense reduction rather than long-term relationship building that could provide strategic advantages and operational flexibility during market transitions. The organizational culture she promoted emphasized individual achievement and departmental performance over collaborative problem-solving and systematic learning that could enhance overall organizational capability. Her leadership philosophy created competitive internal dynamics that reduced coordination effectiveness while preventing the collaborative decision-making processes that address complex strategic challenges requiring diverse expertise and perspective. Amanda's approach to competitive intelligence gathering was limited to publicly available information and industry conference attendance, rather than systematic analysis of competitor strategies and market positioning that could inform strategic planning and anticipate competitive threats before they affected market share and revenue performance. Her strategic planning process lacked comprehensive market analysis and competitive assessment that would enable proactive positioning rather than reactive responses to market developments. Her communication strategy within Sterling Industries emphasized hierarchical authority and formal control, rather than collaborative engagement and systematic feedback collection that could identify operational problems and strategic opportunities through employee insights and customer interaction experience. The information filtering that resulted from her management approach prevented accurate assessment of organizational effectiveness and market positioning. Board relationship management represented another significant vulnerability in Amanda's leadership approach. Her presentations emphasized positive financial metrics while minimizing discussion of strategic challenges and competitive threats that required board attention and strategic guidance. This communication pattern created board confidence based on incomplete information while preventing the strategic oversight that effective corporate governance requires. The legal vulnerabilities created by her romantic pursuit of David represented immediate threats to Sterling Industries through potential harassment litigation, hostile work environment claims, and corporate governance violations that could generate regulatory scrutiny and reputation damage. Her personal conduct created liability exposure that extended beyond her individual actions to affect organizational credibility and stakeholder confidence. Her relationship with industry media reflected similar strategic blindness about reputation management and stakeholder communication. Amanda's approach emphasized personal visibility and achievement recognition over systematic positioning of Sterling Industries as industry leader and innovative technology provider. Her public profile created individual recognition, while failing to enhance organizational reputation and competitive positioning. The financial management philosophy she implemented emphasized quarterly performance optimization over strategic investment in capability development that would sustain competitive advantage through changing market conditions. Her budget allocation decisions consistently prioritized immediate cost reduction over research and development investments that could generate future revenue growth and market differentiation. Her crisis management capabilities had been tested during previous organizational challenges and revealed reactive rather than proactive approaches that address symptoms rather than underlying problems. The leadership crisis created by her public declaration demonstrated her inability to anticipate consequences and manage stakeholder relationships during periods of organizational stress and strategic uncertainty. The interim leadership appointment of Harrison Mitchell exposed additional weaknesses in Sterling Industries, governance structure and succession planning that Amanda had failed to address during her tenure as Chief Executive Officer. Mitchell's appointment reflected board preference for stability over strategic capability, while revealing the absence of comprehensive leadership development and succession planning that should have been established under effective executive management. Amanda's strategic blindness about organizational development and competitive positioning created systematic vulnerabilities that enabled informed intervention from external parties with superior analytical capability and strategic vision. Her approach to corporate leadership reflected conventional thinking that emphasized hierarchical control and individual achievement over collaborative problem-solving and systematic learning that generate sustainable competitive advantages. The operational inefficiencies that had developed under her leadership created opportunities for demonstrating alternative management approaches that could generate measurable improvements in organizational effectiveness and competitive positioning through systematic application of proven business transformation methodologies and collaborative decision-making processes. Her dismissal of alternative perspectives and strategic approaches prevented recognition of transformation opportunities that could enhance organizational capability, while her emotional decision-making created crisis situations that required comprehensive intervention rather than incremental adjustments within existing management frameworks. The combination of strategic limitations, operational blind spots, and governance failures created comprehensive vulnerability that enabled systematic intervention from informed parties with appropriate resources and superior strategic vision. Amanda's confidence in her leadership capability was based on narrow performance metrics rather than comprehensive assessment of organizational effectiveness and competitive positioning. Her assumption that dramatic personal gestures could substitute for effective strategic planning and stakeholder management demonstrated fundamental misunderstanding of executive responsibility and corporate governance requirements that extend beyond individual ambition to encompass comprehensive organizational development and competitive sustainability. The systematic analysis of these weaknesses provided foundation for strategic intervention that would demonstrate superior analytical capability and implementation expertise, while addressing fundamental rather than superficial organizational challenges through evidence-based management principles and collaborative leadership approaches that transcended individual advancement to generate sustainable value for all stakeholders. The comprehensive strategy for transforming Sterling Industries required coordination across multiple phases, each designed to address specific organizational vulnerabilities while building stakeholder confidence in alternative leadership approaches that demonstrated superior analytical capability and strategic vision. The planned development process drew on systematic analysis of competitive dynamics, organizational assessment, and stakeholder mapping that would enable measured intervention rather than reactive responses to Amanda Richardson's continued leadership failures. Phase 1 focused on establishing external credibility and validation through independent assessment of Sterling Industries' competitive position and operational effectiveness. Dr. Catherine Walsh would conduct comprehensive organizational analysis that documented systematic problems requiring strategic intervention, while providing objective evidence base for transformation recommendations that transcended personal considerations or interpersonal conflicts. The organizational assessment would examine leadership effectiveness metrics, operational efficiency patterns, competitive positioning analysis, and stakeholder satisfaction measurements that revealed fundamental challenges requiring comprehensive rather than incremental solutions. Walsh's methodology employed proven frameworks for evaluating corporate governance effectiveness and strategic decision-making processes that would provide credible foundation for subsequent intervention phases. The assessment timeline extended over 6 weeks, enabling thorough analysis of organizational dynamics, while creating opportunities for discrete stakeholder engagement that could build support for transformation initiatives before formal presentation to board members and executive leadership. The phased approach would ensure systematic documentation of problems, while developing consensus around solution frameworks that addressed root causes rather than visible symptoms. The external validation component included coordination with Thomas Bradley's academic research initiative that would position Sterling Industries as case study for organizational transformation methodology and leadership transition effectiveness. The academic partnership would provide theoretical foundation and research rigor that enhanced credibility, while contributing to broader understanding of corporate governance best practices in technology sector environments. Bradley's involvement would ensure that transformation initiatives reflected current academic research and proven methodologies, rather than experimental approaches that could increase implementation risks or stakeholder resistance. The academic framework would also create opportunities for publishing research findings that could enhance professional recognition for all participants, while advancing knowledge in organizational development field. Phase 2 involved strategic positioning with key stakeholder groups that possessed influence over Sterling Industries' future direction and leadership decisions. The stakeholder engagement strategy required careful coordination to ensure consistent messaging while addressing distinct concerns and priorities that different groups brought to organizational evaluation processes. Board member engagement would emphasize fiduciary responsibility and competitive positioning considerations that required strategic leadership capable of addressing fundamental rather than superficial challenges. The board communications strategy would present transformation as rational business decision based on objective analysis rather than personal advancement or interpersonal considerations that could reduce credibility. Jennifer Morrison's legal expertise would ensure that board engagement proceeded through appropriate governance channels while meeting all regulatory requirements and protecting participants from potential liability or procedural challenges. The legal framework would provide structure for documenting decisions and maintaining accountability throughout organizational change processes. Investor communication would focus on financial performance implications and competitive positioning advantages that systematic organizational transformation could generate through improved operational efficiency and strategic decision-making capability. Robert Martinez's banking relationships would facilitate access to institutional investors and financial analysts who could support transformation initiatives through appropriate funding mechanisms and market positioning. The investor engagement strategy would emphasize measurable performance improvements and competitive advantages rather than leadership personality or management style considerations that could reduce focus on substantive business outcomes and financial returns that institutional stakeholders required for continued confidence and support. Client relationship management represented a critical component of stakeholder engagement that required careful coordination to ensure business continuity while building support for organizational improvements that could enhance service quality and competitive responsiveness. The client communication strategy would emphasize operational stability and service enhancement rather than leadership transition details that could create uncertainty or competitive vulnerability. Major clients would receive discrete communication about organizational development initiatives that could improve service delivery and strategic partnership opportunities, while maintaining confidentiality about specific leadership transition plans until formal announcements were appropriate for public disclosure and stakeholder notification. Phase 3 established media positioning and public communication framework that would influence industry perception and competitive positioning during leadership transition process. Catherine Chen's media expertise would ensure accurate coverage that emphasized strategic considerations rather than personal drama, while positioning transformation initiatives as rational business decisions based on operational analysis and competitive requirements. The media strategy would provide platform for thought leadership and industry education that could enhance professional recognition while contributing to broader understanding of effective organizational change management in technology sector environments. The public communication would help manage stakeholder expectations and build support for transformation initiatives through informed discourse about corporate governance effectiveness and leadership accountability. Industry positioning would emphasize Sterling Industries as example of proactive organizational development and strategic planning that addressed competitive challenges through systematic management improvement, rather than crisis response or reactive problem solving that could suggest organizational instability or leadership deficiency. Phase 4 involved preparation for formal presentation of transformation proposal that would demonstrate comprehensive understanding of organizational challenges while providing detailed implementation framework for addressing systematic problems through evidence-based management principles and collaborative decision-making processes. The proposal development would draw on organizational assessment findings, stakeholder feedback, and competitive analysis to create a comprehensive transformation plan that addressed operational efficiency, strategic positioning, and leadership effectiveness through coordinated initiatives that generated measurable improvements in organizational performance and competitive capability. The implementation timeline would establish clear milestones and accountability measures that enabled progress monitoring, while providing flexibility for adaptation based on results and changing market conditions. The phased approach would minimize disruption while ensuring systematic transformation that addressed fundamental rather than superficial organizational challenges. Resource allocation planning would identify funding requirements and implementation support needed for successful transformation, while ensuring appropriate return on investment and stakeholder value creation that justified comprehensive organizational change initiatives. The financial framework would demonstrate cost-effectiveness and competitive advantages that systematic transformation could generate through improved operational efficiency and strategic positioning. Change management methodology would address organizational culture and employee engagement considerations that could affect implementation success, while ensuring broad-based support for transformation initiatives throughout organizational hierarchy. The cultural transformation component would emphasize collaborative problem-solving and systematic learning that enhanced overall organizational capability. Phase 5 established contingency planning for potential resistance or competitive responses that could affect transformation timeline and implementation effectiveness. The risk management framework would identify potential challenges while developing alternative approaches that could maintain strategic momentum despite unexpected obstacles or stakeholder opposition. Competitive response analysis would anticipate potential reactions from industry rivals or internal opposition that could attempt to undermine transformation initiatives through market positioning or stakeholder influence that reduced support for organizational change processes. The defensive strategy would protect transformation momentum while maintaining focus on substantive improvement rather than competitive distractions. Legal protection measures would ensure compliance with all regulatory requirements while protecting participants from potential liability through appropriate documentation and procedural adherence that demonstrated ethical conduct and fiduciary responsibility throughout transformation processes. The comprehensive plan represented a systematic approach to organizational transformation that leveraged years of preparation and relationship development to demonstrate capabilities that had been systematically underestimated by current leadership, while creating sustainable competitive advantages through evidence-based management principles and collaborative decision-making processes. The motivational foundation emphasized strategic patience and systematic preparation as essential elements for achieving sustainable transformation that transcended individual advancement to generate measurable value for all stakeholders involved in organizational development initiatives. The plan demonstrated that effective leadership required comprehensive understanding and collaborative implementation rather than hierarchical authority or emotional decision-making that characterized current organizational dysfunction. The implementation of my strategic framework required establishing credibility through independent validation that transcended personal relationships and positioned my capabilities as recognized expertise within broader professional communities. The network activation process drew on relationships cultivated over years of systematic professional development, creating external verification of competence that would support subsequent intervention initiatives while demonstrating analytical sophistication that Amanda Richardson and Sterling Industries' current leadership had catastrophically underestimated. Dr. Catherine Walsh initiated the external validation process through her comprehensive organizational assessment of Sterling Industries, conducted under the auspices of Walsh Strategic Consulting's research division. Her methodology employed proven frameworks for evaluating corporate governance effectiveness, operational efficiency patterns, and competitive positioning analysis that provided objective foundation for transformation recommendations based on empirical evidence rather than subjective judgment or interpersonal considerations. The assessment revealed systematic operational deficiencies that aligned precisely with my internal analysis, while providing independent verification from recognized industry expert, whose credibility extended throughout technology sector corporate governance circles. Walsh's findings documented leadership effectiveness metrics, strategic decision-making patterns, and organizational culture dynamics that demonstrated fundamental challenges requiring comprehensive intervention rather than incremental adjustments within existing management frameworks. Her preliminary report identified operational inefficiencies totaling approximately $12 million annually in unnecessary costs and missed revenue opportunities, while competitive positioning analysis revealed market share vulnerabilities that threatened long-term sustainability despite current financial performance metrics. The documentation provided concrete evidence base for transformation initiatives that transcended personal considerations while establishing measurable objectives for organizational improvement. The academic partnership with Thomas Bradley at Wharton Executive Education created theoretical foundation and research rigor that enhanced strategic credibility, while positioning Sterling Industries' transformation as significant case study for organizational development methodology and leadership transition effectiveness. Bradley's involvement attracted attention from business academia and corporate governance researchers, who recognized the strategic implications of systematic organizational transformation in competitive technology environments. His research framework examined the relationship between leadership competence assessment and organizational performance outcomes, providing analytical structure that demonstrated how comprehensive evaluation processes could identify strategic capabilities that traditional advancement pathways often overlooked or undervalued. The academic validation positioned my expertise within established intellectual frameworks rather than presenting alternative approaches as experimental or unproven methodologies. The research collaboration generated invitations for presenting preliminary findings at executive education conferences and corporate governance symposiums, creating platforms for thought leadership that established industry recognition beyond Sterling Industries' immediate stakeholder community. These speaking opportunities provided external validation of analytical capabilities while building professional reputation that supported subsequent intervention initiatives. Margaret Chen at Technova Corporation provided competitive intelligence and industry perspective that validated my assessment of Sterling Industries' strategic vulnerabilities while offering partnership opportunities that could address fundamental challenges through collaborative rather than adversarial approaches. Her analysis confirmed that Sterling Industries faced increasing competitive pressure from more agile organizations that had implemented innovative management approaches and operational processes, enabling faster market response and customer satisfaction. Chen's board had authorized preliminary merger exploration based on strategic analysis I had provided through consulting engagement, indicating that external parties recognized transformation potential that Sterling Industries' internal stakeholders had systematically overlooked. The merger framework represented comprehensive alternative to traditional leadership succession that could address both companies' strategic challenges while creating competitive advantages neither organization could achieve independently. The preliminary valuation analysis suggested that combined organization would achieve market capitalization exceeding individual company values through operational synergies and strategic positioning that leveraged complementary capabilities and market access. The financial projections provided compelling business case for organizational transformation that transcended personnel considerations while demonstrating measurable value creation for all stakeholders. Rebecca Martinez at Summit Ventures contributed private equity perspective and investment analysis that positioned Sterling Industries as exceptional opportunity for strategic intervention and value creation through systematic operational improvement and competitive repositioning. Her firm's evaluation process confirmed that current management had created vulnerabilities that informed intervention could address through evidence-based management principles and strategic resource allocation. Summit Ventures' preliminary assessment identified potential for generating substantial returns through operational efficiency improvements, strategic partnership development, and competitive positioning initiatives that current leadership had been unable or unwilling to pursue effectively. The investment framework provided financial resources and strategic credibility necessary for comprehensive organizational transformation while ensuring accountability through performance measurement and stakeholder value creation metrics. Martinez's involvement attracted attention from institutional investors and corporate development professionals, who recognized the strategic implications of systematic organizational transformation in technology sector environments. The private equity validation provided external verification of investment potential, while creating access to capital markets and strategic partnerships that could support implementation initiatives. Elizabeth Harper's investigative analysis for Seattle Business Journal created media platform for examining broader questions about corporate governance effectiveness and leadership accountability in technology sector organizations. Her coverage emphasized strategic considerations rather than personal drama while positioning transformation initiatives as rational business decisions based on operational analysis and competitive requirements. Harper's articles attracted attention from business leaders throughout the Pacific Northwest, who recognized the broader implications of organizational transformation methodology for addressing competitive challenges and operational inefficiencies. The media coverage created industry awareness while building stakeholder confidence in alternative approaches to corporate governance and executive competence evaluation. The journalism platform provided opportunity for thought leadership that demonstrated analytical sophistication and strategic vision, while contributing to broader understanding of effective organizational change management in competitive business environments. The public recognition enhanced professional credibility while creating network connections that extended influence beyond immediate organizational stakeholders. Robert Martinez's financial analysis through Pacific Northwest Bank provided institutional perspective and banking industry validation that supported strategic intervention through appropriate funding mechanisms and stakeholder communication. His assessment confirmed that Sterling Industries possessed financial strength and market position that could support comprehensive transformation initiatives while generating appropriate returns for investors and stakeholders. The banking relationship created access to capital markets and institutional investors who could provide financial resources for strategic initiatives requiring investment beyond current operational budgets. Martinez's expertise in technology sector financing and corporate restructuring transactions offered practical knowledge of investor expectations and financial management requirements during organizational transitions. His involvement provided financial community credibility while ensuring that transformation initiatives met institutional standards for accountability and performance measurement that protected stakeholder interests throughout implementation processes. Dr. Michael Foster's research through Technology Innovation Institute contributed industry intelligence and competitive analysis that enhanced understanding of market trends and technological developments affecting Sterling Industries' strategic position. His analysis confirmed that traditional hierarchical management structures were becoming competitive disadvantages in markets that rewarded rapid innovation and customer responsiveness. Foster's research insights informed transformation planning, while his industry relationships provided access to best practices and implementation expertise from successful organizational change initiatives in similar competitive environments. The academic perspective contributed to strategic planning effectiveness through objective analysis of industry trends and competitive dynamics. The combination of organizational assessment, academic research, competitive intelligence, investment analysis, media coverage, financial validation, and industry research created comprehensive external validation that demonstrated strategic competence and transformation potential through multiple independent sources rather than relying on internal advocacy or personal relationships. The network activation process established credibility that extended throughout technology sector professional communities while providing access to resources and expertise necessary for implementing comprehensive organizational transformation. The external validation transcended Sterling Industries' immediate stakeholder community while creating industry recognition that supported subsequent leadership transition initiatives. The systematic approach to credibility building demonstrated strategic thinking and professional network development that validated years of systematic relationship building and expertise development. The external recognition provided foundation for strategic intervention that addressed fundamental organizational challenges while demonstrating capabilities that current leadership had systematically underestimated through conventional assessment approaches. The quarterly board meeting at Sterling Industries provided the optimal opportunity for demonstrating strategic capabilities while maintaining discretion about the comprehensive transformation plan that would ultimately reshape organizational leadership according to superior analytical frameworks and evidence-based management principles. The timing aligned perfectly with external validation processes that had established credibility through independent assessment while creating stakeholder awareness of systematic challenges requiring sophisticated intervention. Dr. Catherine Walsh's organizational assessment had reached preliminary conclusions that confirmed fundamental operational deficiencies, requiring immediate attention to prevent competitive deterioration and stakeholder confidence erosion. Her request to present initial findings to the board created the perfect platform for introducing alternative analytical perspectives that transcended current leadership limitations, while demonstrating strategic sophistication that had been systematically overlooked by existing governance structures. The board meeting agenda allocated 30 minutes for Walsh's presentation of preliminary organizational assessment findings, followed by executive discussion of implications and potential response strategies. The structure provided controlled environment for systematic revelation of analytical capabilities while maintaining professional credibility through established consulting engagement, rather than personal advocacy or direct challenge to current leadership authority. Walsh's presentation methodology had been carefully coordinated to establish objective foundation for subsequent intervention, while creating opportunities for strategic input that demonstrated comprehensive understanding of organizational dynamics and competitive positioning challenges. The academic framework provided credible structure for introducing analytical perspectives that current leadership had been unable or unwilling to develop independently. Harrison Mitchell's interim leadership had stabilized immediate crisis management, while revealing additional governance vulnerabilities that created openings for demonstrating superior strategic planning and implementation capabilities. His conventional approach to organizational management emphasized administrative efficiency over strategic innovation, creating contrast opportunities for alternative frameworks that addressed fundamental rather than superficial challenges. The board composition included several members with limited technology sector experience, who relied primarily on financial summaries and executive presentations rather than comprehensive operational analysis or competitive intelligence. Their decision-making patterns suggested receptivity to systematic assessment that provided detailed understanding of market dynamics and organizational effectiveness beyond quarterly performance metrics. Walsh introduced her presentation by acknowledging the professional competence that had enabled Sterling Industries to achieve current market position, while identifying strategic vulnerabilities that required immediate attention to maintain competitive advantage and stakeholder confidence during rapidly changing industry conditions. Her analysis examined operational efficiency patterns across departments, revealing coordination failures and resource allocation inefficiencies that collectively represented approximately $12 million in annual cost increases and revenue losses. The systematic documentation provided concrete evidence for transformation recommendations that transcended personnel considerations while establishing measurable objectives for organizational improvement. The competitive positioning analysis revealed market share vulnerabilities that threatened long-term sustainability despite impressive quarterly financial performance. Emerging competitors had implemented innovative management approaches and operational processes that enabled faster response to market changes and customer requirements, creating strategic disadvantages for organizations maintaining traditional hierarchical structures and conventional decision-making processes. Customer satisfaction metrics demonstrated declining trends in service quality perception and partnership relationship effectiveness, indicating systematic problems with client relationship management that extended beyond individual account management to encompass organizational culture and strategic prioritization patterns. The data revealed correlation between internal operational dysfunction and external stakeholder confidence that required comprehensive intervention rather than incremental adjustments. Employee retention analysis identified concerning patterns in technical personnel turnover that created knowledge transfer challenges and training cost increases affecting organizational capability and competitive responsiveness. The human resources data indicated systematic problems with management effectiveness and organizational culture that undermine talent development and retention strategies essential for technology sector competitiveness. Walsh's methodology included comparative analysis with industry benchmarks and best practices that positioned Sterling Industries' performance within broader competitive context while identifying specific improvement opportunities that could generate measurable returns through systematic implementation of proven management principles and organizational development frameworks. The presentation concluded with preliminary recommendations for comprehensive organizational assessment that would provide detailed transformation roadmap addressing fundamental challenges through evidence-based solutions, rather than conventional approaches that had proven insufficient for addressing systematic operational and strategic deficiencies. Board member questions revealed varying levels of understanding about organizational development methodology and strategic transformation requirements, creating opportunities for demonstrating analytical sophistication through informed responses that established credibility while building support for comprehensive intervention initiatives. Director Patricia Hamilton inquired about implementation timeline and resource requirements for addressing identified challenges, providing opening for discussing systematic approach to organizational transformation that balanced urgency with thoroughness, while ensuring stakeholder confidence throughout change management processes. Director Michael Foster questioned the relationship between operational improvements and competitive positioning advantages, creating opportunity for explaining how systematic organizational development could generate sustainable market differentiation through enhanced capability and strategic responsiveness that competitors employing conventional management approaches could not replicate effectively. Director Robert Chen requested clarification about measurement criteria and accountability frameworks that would ensure transformation initiatives generated promised results rather than consuming resources without producing measurable improvements in organizational effectiveness and competitive positioning. The questioning process revealed board receptivity to systematic analysis and evidence-based decision-making, while indicating concern about implementation risk and stakeholder impact that required careful management through phased approach and comprehensive communication strategy. Walsh's responses demonstrated analytical rigor and practical experience that established confidence in transformation methodology, while addressing specific concerns about timeline, resource allocation, and performance measurement that board members required for supporting comprehensive organizational development initiatives. The discussion created natural opening for introducing complementary expertise and additional analytical perspectives that could enhance assessment comprehensiveness, while providing specialized knowledge in areas requiring technical understanding of technology sector competitive dynamics and organizational transformation challenges. At this strategic moment, Walsh introduced my consulting background and analytical expertise as valuable resource for enhancing organizational assessment through insider knowledge of operational realities and strategic positioning that external evaluation could not access independently. Her introduction positioned my involvement as professional consultation rather than personal advocacy, maintaining credibility while creating platform for demonstrating capabilities. The board response indicated genuine interest in accessing comprehensive analytical perspective that combined external objectivity with internal operational understanding, recognizing value proposition that traditional consulting engagement could not provide through conventional assessment methodology. Walsh recommended that I participate in expanded organizational assessment as strategic consultant specializing in operational analysis and competitive positioning, providing detailed understanding of internal dynamics that could inform transformation planning while ensuring recommendations addressed actual rather than theoretical challenges. Board authorization for expanded assessment created formal platform for systematic demonstration of analytical capabilities while establishing professional credibility through recognized consulting engagement rather than personal relationship or informal advice that could reduce effectiveness or create perception challenges. The expanded assessment framework provided access to confidential information and strategic planning processes that would enable comprehensive evaluation of organizational challenges while creating opportunities for demonstrating strategic sophistication that transcended current leadership capabilities. The first strategic move had achieved primary objectives of establishing credibility through professional engagement while creating platform for systematic demonstration of analytical capabilities that current leadership had systematically underestimated through conventional assessment approaches that overlooked comprehensive strategic thinking and evidence-based management expertise. The board authorization represented validation of strategic approach while providing access to resources and information necessary for developing comprehensive transformation recommendations that addressed fundamental rather than superficial organizational challenges through systematic application of proven business development principles and collaborative leadership frameworks. Amanda Richardson's return from administrative leave coincided with the board's authorization of expanded organizational assessment, creating immediate conflict between her efforts to reassert executive authority and the systematic evaluation processes that threatened to expose the full extent of her leadership deficiencies. Her strategic response revealed the desperation of someone whose professional survival depended on preventing comprehensive analysis of organizational effectiveness and competitive positioning. The administrative leave period had provided Amanda with time to develop counter-strategies that emphasized her historical performance achievements, while attempting to discredit alternative analytical approaches as unnecessary disruption during periods requiring organizational stability and executive continuity. Her communication with board members emphasized loyalty and institutional knowledge over systematic assessment and evidence-based decision-making. Her first strategic move involved challenging the scope and methodology of the organizational assessment, arguing that external consultation represented wasteful expense during periods requiring cost discipline and operational focus. Amanda positioned comprehensive analysis as consultants seeking to justify unnecessary fees rather than legitimate evaluation of organizational effectiveness and competitive positioning requirements. The challenge revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of board fiduciary responsibility and stakeholder accountability that extended beyond short-term cost optimization to encompass long-term strategic positioning and competitive sustainability. Her emphasis on expense reduction over strategic investment demonstrated precisely the type of limited thinking that had created systematic vulnerabilities, requiring comprehensive intervention. Amanda's attempt to limit assessment scope created direct confrontation with board authorization, while revealing her resistance to objective evaluation of leadership effectiveness and organizational performance. Her defensive positioning indicated awareness that comprehensive analysis would document systematic failures that conventional performance metrics had obscured through selective reporting and incomplete stakeholder feedback. The escalating tension manifested during the follow-up board session where Amanda presented her formal response to preliminary assessment findings. Her presentation strategy emphasized attacking methodology and questioning consultant credibility, rather than addressing substantive organizational challenges that required strategic attention and systematic solutions. Her critique of external assessment focused on cost considerations and timeline disruption, rather than engaging with specific findings about operational inefficiency, competitive vulnerabilities, and strategic planning deficiencies that threatened long-term organizational sustainability and stakeholder value creation. The defensive presentation revealed Amanda's inability to respond constructively to evidence-based analysis, while demonstrating strategic thinking limitations that prevented recognition of transformation opportunities requiring comprehensive rather than incremental approaches to organizational development and competitive positioning. Board member responses indicated growing concern about executive resistance to objective evaluation and systematic improvement initiatives that represented standard corporate governance practices for ensuring organizational effectiveness and stakeholder protection. The resistance patterns suggested leadership priorities that emphasized personal authority over institutional accountability. Director Patricia Hamilton questioned Amanda's reluctance to engage with assessment findings that identified specific improvement opportunities requiring management attention and strategic investment. Her inquiry revealed board expectations for executive responsiveness to systematic analysis rather than defensive positioning that prevented addressing documented organizational challenges. Director Michael Foster expressed concern about competitive positioning implications of operational inefficiencies that external assessment had documented through comparative analysis with industry benchmarks and best practices. His questions indicated recognition that organizational effectiveness required continuous improvement rather than maintaining status quo approaches that were becoming competitive disadvantages. Director Robert Chen requested detailed response plans for addressing specific deficiencies that assessment had identified through systematic evaluation of organizational capabilities and market positioning. His approach emphasized practical problem-solving over political considerations that could prevent implementing necessary improvements. Amanda's responses revealed strategic limitation and analytical deficiency that prevented developing comprehensive solutions to complex organizational challenges requiring systematic thinking and collaborative implementation approaches. Her focus on defending existing approaches rather than proposing improvements demonstrated leadership philosophy that prioritized personal authority over institutional effectiveness. The confrontational dynamic created opportunities for demonstrating alternative analytical approaches that addressed board concerns through evidence-based recommendations and systematic implementation planning that transcended personality conflicts, while focusing on measurable organizational improvement and competitive advantage creation. During this critical moment, I presented supplemental analysis that addressed specific board questions about competitive positioning and operational efficiency, while providing detailed recommendations for addressing documented deficiencies through proven business transformation methodologies and strategic resource allocation frameworks. The presentation methodology emphasized objective analysis and systematic problem-solving rather than personal criticism or political positioning that could reduce credibility while creating unnecessary conflict during periods requiring collaborative decision-making and stakeholder alignment around organizational improvement initiatives. The analytical framework demonstrated comprehensive understanding of technology sector competitive dynamics, while providing practical implementation approaches that address specific challenges through measurable interventions and accountability structures that ensured sustainable improvement rather than temporary adjustments. Board reception indicated genuine appreciation for systematic thinking and evidence-based recommendations that contrasted sharply with Amanda's defensive positioning and resistance to objective evaluation of organizational effectiveness and competitive requirements. The comparative demonstration revealed analytical sophistication and strategic planning capability that had been systematically overlooked by existing leadership evaluation processes, while highlighting fundamental differences in approach to organizational development and competitive positioning challenges. Amanda's response to alternative analytical presentation revealed increasing desperation and strategic confusion as she attempted to discredit comprehensive assessment through personal attacks and procedural objections, rather than engaging with substantive recommendations that address documented organizational challenges. Her escalation included attempts to question my professional qualifications and consulting credibility despite board authorization for expanded assessment participation and documented expertise in organizational development and strategic planning. that external validation had confirmed through academic and industry recognition. The personal attacks revealed character deficiencies and professional insecurity that undermined executive credibility, while demonstrating precisely the type of emotional decision-making that had created systematic organizational problems requiring comprehensive intervention through alternative leadership approaches. Board members responded with visible concern about executive conduct and professional judgment that extended beyond organizational assessment to encompass fundamental questions about leadership effectiveness and stakeholder representation that corporate governance structures were designed to address. The tension escalation created clear distinction between systematic analytical approach and emotional defensive positioning that enabled board members to evaluate alternative frameworks for organizational development and competitive positioning that transcended personality conflicts while addressing substantive business challenges. Director Hamilton requested private session with assessment consultants to discuss implementation recommendations without executive interference that could prevent objective evaluation of transformation opportunities and strategic planning requirements that board fiduciary responsibility demanded for protecting stakeholder interests. The private consultation provided platform for comprehensive discussion of organizational transformation methodology and implementation planning that demonstrated strategic sophistication and practical experience, while addressing specific board concerns about timeline, resource allocation, and performance measurement that accountability frameworks required. Director Foster inquired about leadership transition planning and executive competence evaluation that could ensure organizational effectiveness during transformation implementation while maintaining operational stability and competitive positioning throughout change management processes. The leadership discussion created opportunity for demonstrating executive capabilities and strategic vision that transcended current organizational limitations, while providing practical approaches to complex challenges requiring collaborative decision-making and systematic implementation that generated measurable improvements. Director Chen requested detailed analysis of competitive implications and market positioning advantages that systematic organizational transformation could generate through operational efficiency improvements and strategic capability development that industry benchmarks indicated were necessary for sustained competitiveness. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.